Myanmar, a land of golden pagodas and vibrant cultures, often seen as a paradise. But beneath this beauty lies a darker truth: decades of violence and oppression by its own military. Villages destroyed, families shattered, lives lost. This is not a distant conflict, but a daily reality for millions. This is the story of Myanmar's hidden horror. The Tatmadaw, Myanmar's military, is everywhere. Its power absolute, its rule unquestioned. Fear is woven into daily life. To defy the military is to risk everything. For decades, the junta crushed dissent and isolated the nation, holding its people hostage to their own power. This is a nation held captive, its people longing for justice and freedom. The Tatmadaw's grip is rooted in Myanmar's turbulent past: colonialism, conflict, and power struggles. After independence, the military filled the void left by Aung San's assassination, tightening control with every coup. By 1962, General Ne Win's regime plunged the country into authoritarian darkness. Fear became a way of life, democracy a distant dream. If you want to see more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Decades of military rule left Myanmar isolated, but the 2000s brought hope: reforms, elections, and Aung San Suu Kyi's rise. Yet the 2008 constitution ensured the Tatmadaw's continued dominance, controlling key ministries and security. The world watched as democracy flickered, but the military never truly let go. The promise of freedom remained an illusion. In 2017, the Tatmadaw unleashed terror on the Rohingya, exposing deep prejudice and brutal tactics. Villages burned, thousands fled, and the world condemned the violence as ethnic cleansing. The military, emboldened by impunity, undermined reforms and stoked division. Beneath the surface, tensions simmered, waiting to erupt. February 1st, 2021. While Myanmar slept, the Tatmadaw struck. Communications cut, leaders arrested, and propaganda filled the airwaves. The coup was swift, hope was extinguished overnight. Soldiers filled the streets, fear returned, and a nation woke to a new era of darkness. The brief taste of freedom was gone. In the aftermath, defiance surged. Protests erupted across cities and villages. The Tatmadaw responded with bullets, turning peaceful demonstrations into bloodbaths. Night raids brought terror. Homes burned, families vanished, fear spread. Survivors whispered of atrocities, their stories carried on the wind. Fire became the Tatmadaw's weapon. Villages like Thantlang were torched in the night. Homes, shops, even churches and schools were reduced to ashes. Families fled into forests, leaving behind everything they knew. Across Myanmar, entire communities vanished in smoke and flame. The destruction was swift, merciless, and total. Myanmar's children witnessed horrors. Homes destroyed, loved ones lost, innocents stolen. Trauma runs deep. Nightmares, anxiety, and silence haunt a generation. Education disrupted, futures uncertain, their suffering ignored by a powerless world. The children's voices are lost amid the violence. The true horror lives in survivors' stories. Families torn apart, lives shattered. Ma Kin recalls soldiers storming her village, accusing farmers of rebellion. Umayant's son was dragged away. A teacher watched his father beaten to death. A shopkeeper's daughter vanished, her fate unknown. Each story is a testament to cruelty and resilience. The Tatmadaw's cruelty spares no one. Mothers grieve, children are traumatized. Da I Theta clings to memories of her daughter taken by soldiers. 10-year-old Aung Mayat, silent since witnessing his brother's murder, is haunted by fear. These are the forgotten victims, their pain drowned out by the world's indifference. The physical and psychological scars left by the Tatmadaw's rampage are not easily erased. They linger long after the smoke from burning villages has cleared, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present threat of violence. For the displaced, crammed into overcrowded camps or seeking shelter in the dense jungles along the Thai border. The trauma is compounded by the daily struggle for survival. They grapple with hunger, disease, and the uncertainty of a future shrouded in darkness. The lucky ones, those who manage to escape to neighboring countries like Thailand and India, find themselves unwanted, viewed with suspicion and treated as burdens. They live in limbo, their lives on hold, haunted by memories of a homeland they may never see again. The international community, though quick to condemn the violence, has been slow to offer meaningful assistance. Sanctions, while well-intentioned, have done little to cripple the junta's grip on power, and humanitarian aid is often blocked by bureaucratic hurdles and the Tatmadaws' deliberate obstruction. The people of Myanmar, abandoned by the world, their voices silenced, their suffering ignored, are left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. They do so with a resilience born of generations of hardship, clinging to the faintest glimmer of hope that one day, the darkness will lift and they will be free. The idyllic image of rural Myanmar, with its emerald rice paddies and bamboo villages nestled amongst verdant hills, belies a heart-wrenching reality. The Tatmadaws' campaign of terror has transformed this once peaceful landscape into a patchwork of shattered communities and displaced families, their lives upended, their futures uncertain. Over 1 million people, according to the United Nations, have been internally displaced since the coup. They huddle in makeshift camps seeking refuge in churches, monasteries, and schools, their lives reduced to a daily struggle for basic necessities. The lucky ones find shelter with relatives or sympathetic strangers, their presence straining already limited resources. Others are forced to flee into the dense jungles bordering Thailand and India, braving treacherous terrain, wild animals, and the ever-present threat of landmines. The psychological toll of displacement compounds the physical hardships. Families torn apart, their homes and livelihoods destroyed, grapple with the trauma of loss and the uncertainty of a future shrouded in fear. For those who manage to escape the Tatmadaws' reign of terror by crossing the border into neighboring countries, life offers little respite. They trade the immediate threat of violence for the grinding uncertainty of life as refugees, unwanted and often forgotten. In overcrowded camps in Thailand, Malaysia, and India, they live in a state of limbo, their movements restricted, their access to education and employment limited. They face discrimination, language barriers, and the constant fear of being forcibly repatriated to the very country they risked their lives to escape. Many rely on the generosity of international aid organizations and local communities, their survival hanging by a thread. The psychological scars of trauma, compounded by the challenges of displacement, cast a long shadow over their lives, making it difficult to heal, to hope, to rebuild. The world, preoccupied with its own problems, often seems oblivious to their plight. The media spotlight, once focused on the plight of the Rohingya, has moved on, leaving the stories of those displaced by the coup largely untold. Perhaps the most insidious consequence of the Tatmadaws' brutality is the stifling climate of fear that has enveloped Myanmar. The junta, through a combination of brute force and sophisticated propaganda, has effectively silenced dissent, turning neighbors against neighbors, sowing distrust and suspicion. Speaking out against the regime, even in hushed whispers, can have deadly consequences. Arbitrary arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings have become commonplace, silencing any form of dissent and driving opposition underground. The internet, once a lifeline for information and communication, has been weaponized by the junta. Social media platforms are closely monitored, and those deemed critical of the regime risk arrest and imprisonment. Independent news outlets have been shuttered, their journalists harassed, intimidated, or disappeared. The international community, while condemning the crackdown on freedom of expression, has struggled to find effective mechanisms to counter it. The Tatmadaws' stranglehold on information, coupled with the fear that permeates every aspect of life in Myanmar, makes it extremely challenging to get an accurate picture of the situation on the ground and to hold the perpetrators of violence accountable. Why? It's the question that echoes in the silence left by the Tatmadaws' brutality. Why inflict such suffering on their own people? Why shatter a nation's fragile hope? The answers, complex and intertwined, lie in a toxic brew of greed, paranoia, and a deeply ingrained sense of impunity. For decades, the Tatmadaw has operated as a state within a state, its vast economic interests shielded from accountability, its leaders enriching themselves while the majority of the population struggles to survive. The prospect of genuine democracy, with its emphasis on transparency and accountability, posed a direct threat to their ill-gotten gains. But greed alone cannot explain the sheer savagery unleashed upon the people of Myanmar. The Tatmadaw, steeped in a nationalist ideology that paints them as the sole guarantors of unity and stability, view any challenge to their authority as a threat to the very fabric of the nation. Dissent is not merely disagreement, it is treason, punishable by any means necessary. This siege mentality is reinforced by a deep-seated paranoia, a belief that the country is surrounded by enemies, both internal and external, plotting its downfall. This paranoia, fueled by decades of isolation and propaganda, justifies the Tatmadaw's iron grip on power and its brutal suppression of any perceived threat. The world has watched the unfolding tragedy in Myanmar with a mixture of horror and helplessness. Condemnations ring out from international organizations, sanctions are imposed, and yet the violence continues, the junta seemingly impervious to external pressure. The reasons for this inaction are complex and multifaceted. Geopolitical considerations, particularly the delicate balance of power in Southeast Asia, make some countries hesitant to take a strong stance against the junta. Economic interests, with China being a major investor in Myanmar, also play a role in shaping international response. The Tatmadaw, skilled at playing on these divisions and exploiting the international community's reluctance to intervene militarily, has so far managed to weather the storm of condemnation. They have grown adept at using humanitarian aid as a bargaining chip, restricting access to vulnerable populations and using it to line their own pockets. And yet, amidst the despair, there are glimmers of hope. The international community, though divided, has not completely abandoned the people of Myanmar. Targeted sanctions against key members of the junta and their business interests are beginning to bite. The International Criminal Court is investigating allegations of crimes against humanity, raising the prospect of accountability for those responsible for the atrocities. The weight of suffering in Myanmar is immense, threatening to extinguish hope. Yet, like the lotus that blooms in muddy waters, the human spirit finds a way to rise. The people of Myanmar, battered but unbroken, refuse to surrender to despair. In the face of cruelty, acts of courage and compassion emerge. Students risk their lives to keep the flame of knowledge alive. From Yangon streets to remote villages, a silent pact of defiance binds the people. This is not blind optimism. The path ahead is long and difficult, but together, they walk on, believing the darkness will lift and a new dawn will come. Myanmar stands at a crossroads, caught between oppression and the hope for freedom. The world watches, but true change demands more than words. The people's silent cries call for action, sanctions, justice, and support that make a real difference. But above all, hope endures in the hearts of Myanmar's people. Their courage and unity light the way forward. Their struggle is not just for themselves, but for all who yearn for freedom. As the sun sets over the golden land, hope remains, like a flame that cannot be extinguished. This is a prayer for Myanmar, for peace, justice, and the dawn of freedom.